Good afternoon. Welcome to the September 4th School Board Work Session. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. And this time, Madam Superintendent, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. The first item we have on the agenda is our policy updates. That will be with Wendy Dodge.
Policy updates for you. The first is a single policy that's a staff recommendation, and that is as a result of switching language from old NCLB language to new ESSA language. The second set are updates recommended by Neola. It's the completion of our package of safety updates. And then a few kind of ancillary policy updates regarding parent organizations and insurance claims. So please let me know if there's any questions.
Any questions on the updates? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have our fiscal year 2018-19 budget. That's going to be Mr. Perron and Mr. Pitts.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So we should be fairly brief because this is the last piece of the budget hearings for this fiscal year. So just a little history. Recent history. On the 25th of July, the first part of our trim notices, we had the advertisement in the paper. The board approved that for the tentative budget on Saturday, July 28th. The board voted that. And in accordance with the trim, we have to have one final public hearing, and that is tonight. And I will read into the minutes, the millages that we did in July. They haven't changed. And then you'll have 5 motions to make, or 6 votes actually, with the 3 millages. But Jason's also here to give a kind of a brief update on the actual final budget with some factoids, so you have. And then we'll be ready to hopefully vote that tonight.
Okay, for the board members, we delivered budget books to you last week. And in essence of time, I'm not going to go page by page through the entire budget book. And just a little thanks to my staff. It's a chore to turn this budget book out, as we have to close the financial year. That usually ends about the first week of that happens about the first week of August, and so the middle 2 weeks of August are spent producing this budget book, which I believe is the most comprehensive document we have that describes the activities that occurred within our district. So I provided each of you a little handout here that's sort of just the budget highlights that I'm just going to go over. It should take me just a couple of minutes, and then we'll answer any questions that you may have about the budget. And I already see some typos, and I apologize for typos at a time, but I do make those mistakes occasionally. Our district remains the 7th largest district in Florida, the 28th largest district in the nation based on student enrollment. On a per student funding basis, Polk County ranks 64th out of the 67 districts. And even though we receive the 4th lowest per student funding levels in the state, Polk County still offers the 2nd highest starting salary for teachers, 25th highest average salary for teachers. For the fiscal year ending 2017, Polk still ranked the fourth lowest of all other districts as far as administrative cost. And those are figures that you're well familiar with. For this new budget year, the certified tax roll for Polk County has increased about $3 billion to 35, actually to 38, that should be 38 billion. In front of you, you see 33 billion. If you want to correct that, that should be 38 billion, 33 million, $22,559. The required local effort millage rate has decreased for the third year in a row. This year's RLE of 4.003 mils is a decrease of 0.263 mils from fiscal year 18. The total tax rate for fiscal year 18-19 is 6.2510 mils. This is a decrease of 1.335 mils from 10 years ago. The total millage rate in fiscal year 10 was 7.586 mils. For fiscal year 18-19, a homeowner with a home of assessed taxable value of $100,000 would see their school board taxes decrease $26 versus fiscal year 18. Per student funding, Polk County's base student allocation, the BSA, is increasing 3 cents to $4,081.65 for the fiscal year 19 school year. This is the district's primary source of discretionary funds, which can be used for any allowable purpose, such as operating costs, salaries, retirement, and health insurance. This increase in BSA results in an additional $3,000 to the district. Total per student funding is increasing 2.6%, or about $181.95 per student for fiscal year 18. On page 2, I gave a breakdown of that $181 in extra funding per student. $73.78 is the one-time funding compression allocation that Polk County received this year. We were one of only several districts to receive that one-time funding. $31.87 will go towards extra Safe Schools allocation, which is a requirement of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act. $22.97 will be utilized for the new mental health allocation, which is also a requirement of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act. $5.34 increase in instructional materials allocation per student. $4.31 increase in transportation allocation per student. And the other $43.68 of the $181 are other miscellaneous categories. The overall budget that you have before you for fiscal year 19 is $1,467,382,367. This is a $44,364,527 increase from the fiscal year 18 adopted budget. The general fund will see an increase of $52 million for a total of $887,259,861 for fiscal year 19. Of this increase, 87% will go towards instructional services. I just want to say for the press, I have this printed out for you, so you don't worry about the exact dollar figures I'm spouting off. I'll give you a cheat sheet after this meeting. The primary source of the general fund is the Florida Education Financing Program, also known as the FEFP. The FEFP revenue of $748,956,215 is an increase of $40 million for the fiscal year 19 adopted budget. Of that $40 million, $22 million is due to increased student enrollment. For fiscal year 19, payments to charter schools is increasing $10,797,153, for a projected $107,683,713. This is up from $96 million in fiscal year 18. Payments to charter schools represent 14.4% of our FEFP revenue. For fiscal year 19, we are projecting an increase in unweighted full-time equivalent students, otherwise known as UFTE, of 3,147 for a total projected student population of 104,739 students. The capital budget will actually see a decrease this year of $11,847,000. The total capital budget will be $181,075,404 for fiscal year 19. Just as an additional bit of information, of that $181 million, $101,044,838 is sitting in fund balance. So the remaining $80 million is revenue, primarily comprised of the half-cent sales tax for facilities, local capital improvement, otherwise known as LCI, and impact fees. Just a special note, as everyone is well aware of, the current half-cent sales tax expires December 31st, 2018. Voters will have the opportunity to continue the sales tax in November. Because it's expiring, only $21 million of the expected $42 to $45 million the tax would generate if it remains in effect for the entire fiscal year was budgeted. That's primarily why you see a decrease in capital funds. Once the voters approve this in November, we will increase the capital budget the other $21 million. It's also worth noting that impact fees are currently generating approximately $14 million a year in capital revenue for new school facilities. The Board of County Commissioners have control of the various impact fees and are currently only charging 50% of the approved amount. Fund balance, general fund. The Polk County School Board has a policy of 5% for actual unrestricted ending fund balance, while the state requires a 3% minimum unrestricted ending fund balance. For fiscal year 19, the budgeted unrestricted fund balance is $24,369,430, or 3.1%. In any given year, the school board experiences an average of $15 million in lapse. Lapse is the difference between budgeted expenditures and actual expenditures. Most of the lapse comes from salaries, primarily due to the number of unfilled positions at any given time throughout the fiscal year. It is expected that actual unrestricted ending fund balance will be over 5% due to this lapse. Okay, that's a quick overview of the nearly 300-page document you have in front of you. Questions that we could answer?
Ms. Selleck and Mr. Townsend.
So we had 3,147 more students this year. Projected. Do we know what that looks like to the actual number of students we've seen come in?
Yeah. We haven't
done the counts yet, right?
So
we do a fake one internal, an 8-day.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we get prepped for what we have to do for the state, so
Yeah,
it's
so
unofficial.
did we have an 8-day unofficial?
We did do it. I don't have the number off.
let me say that the 3,000 figure that you're referring to is an FTE, and not necessarily the number of student bodies. That 8-day count is actual student bodies, so sometimes it doesn't really translate into 3,000, and we don't have the figures in front of us to tell you.
But we can't tell that it's heading, the trend is what we're projecting. We'll be able to give that.
I assume just from hearing unofficial that we're pretty up. I was just wondering if the whole state was up, if but we don't really know yet?
That's too early. I haven't heard anything on the statewide. We can give you an update tonight on where we are with our students.
Okay, that's all, I was just wondering.
Mr. Townsend and Mr. Harris.
I just want to walk through a couple of things for the public benefit. On the required local effort millage, I think it's important that the public understand that the board does not get to set that. That is dictated from Tallahassee as part of the settlement every year. Had that required local effort stayed the same in like what it was in 2014 or 15 versus being rolled back, how much more additional money would we have this year? It's about $48 million, right? Just this year. If it stays roughly the same.
Can you give me a couple minutes?
Yeah.
I think I've already verified.
Okay, good. All right. That's fine.
I believe that is the figure that
Right.
that we've discussed.
Right.
And that sounds correct.
And I think the total since 2014, 2015 is up near 130 million. That's just not getting used on the school district here. And the reason for that is your board is forced to have the rollback rate, or a rollback rate imposed. That should be a political choice at the board level. It's not. And the upshot of that is that the school facilities and operations of this district do not benefit from the growth in our tax base. We are not benefiting from the growth in that tax base. That is being sent back to the public, which is fine, or specifically to property owners, but there's an opportunity cost for that, and it's what we pay our teachers, it's what we pay our bus drivers, it's how well and how resourced this entire operation is. So I just wanted to make sure I say that for the record. It's $48 million just this year that could have gone to pay bus drivers more than we're paying them, to pay teachers more than we're paying them, to buy more technology, whatever we could have done with them. So just a thing to be aware of.
Mr. Harris, then Ms. Fields.
On the second page of the summary here under overall budget, when you make the presentation tonight, a suggestion would be either the first or second paragraph there under overall budget to indicate the increase in the number of students from last year to this year. Because if I look at it as a member of the public, I think you're getting another $52 million and you don't have any more expenses. So having an understanding of X number of more students being educated this year than last year kind of helps put that number in perspective. That it's not just an additional $50+ million with no additional cost to educate to the community, but we do have that.
We can break out what the growth equates to.
Because I think that's directly tied to the understanding in the community of why costs aren't stagnant, that they constantly increase due to the demand that the community places on the school district by enrolling more students.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Fields.
Mine was similar to his. In addition, maybe explaining what comprises of the increase of the overall budget from last year to this year, what the categories might be, and then why is there an increase to the charter schools? I know the answer, but just explaining why there's an increase.
Okay. Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Pitts, when you have that number that you discussed that Mr. Townsend had mentioned related to the millage rollbacks, could you make that available, please? Because I plan on using that in my sales tax presentations.
Send it to all of us if you could. Yes, please. I think that's what you were asking.
Yes.
Okay, one other thing. I from memory, I thought it went further back than the number of years that you all said. It seems like there's been a rollback in the millage rates forever. So
There was one anomaly. There was 1 year that was a slight increase, a very slight increase. Other than that, it would have been a decrease for quite a few years.
Yeah.
4 years ago, there was just it basically stayed the same. It was just.
But overall,
But
it's
overall,
always been
it
a
has
rollback.
been,
And I
yes.
think that that needs to be clarified.
Any other questions? To answer Ms. Sellers' questions, I was trying to find the comparison for enrollment last year. We're at 103,800 students right now, but I was trying at the 8-day count. And I was trying to get the comparison for the 8-day count for last year, because that's why I know you want to know if that's different, and we'll have that one. Okay, for the 8 days.
We added a page this year, and you may or may not have your budget book with you, but on page 164, if you want to write this down as a reference, there's a pretty good graphic that shows the decrease in millage rates at the same time that our property value, well, over the last few years, we saw the decrease. Now they're increasing. That's a pretty good graphic to show how we are not able to garnish the increase in property values because of the decrease in rates.
In defense of myself, I actually figured out the math from this graphic. I didn't go bug it. I just
extrapolated the
I just said,
graph.
please tell me it's right.
And his math
pretty
is
good.
right on.
Imagine that, English major.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Jason, you'll make sure that we get that copy
Will do,
right then
yes.
into the meeting? Okay, thank you. The next one we have is the job description. I know Mr. Barone is there because he'll be coming. You can just stay right there. Yeah. For the next one. For the next one is the job description regarding to a technician regarding FEMA.
Good afternoon. We are bringing a job description to assist with the technician, budgetary accountant, FEMA to assist with processing FEMA paperwork. Essentially, the position is all grant funded, so it will be paid out of the monies that we receive from FEMA from the hurricane damage. And it's approximately $28,000. The starting salary will be $28,000. But it is all grant funded. And yes, Mr. Harris, we will include in the notes section that the position is grant funded, and when the position when the grant ends, the position will close.
It's important that the employee know that too.
Correct. We will certainly tell them about that as well.
Are there any questions?
Sad that we have to have that.
Yeah, it is. The next item coming before you is regarding AFSCME, and I believe Ms. Porteous and Mr. Perron are going to be there together on that.
Correct. For the past 2 board meetings, we've heard from bus drivers and AFSCME personnel regarding their wages. And so I am happy, or we are happy, to state that we have reached a salary conclusion with AFSCME, specifically on bus drivers, and I'll go through it in a second, but with the whole AFSCME group, with their whole unit. Larry's team, Mr. Miller's team rather, and we've just worked really well together, let me say that. It's just been us sitting in a room and trying to decide really what we can do and how we can better help those employees. So essentially, all employees will get a 1.5% COLA, cost of living increase, across the board. And then in addition, some employees that are not at the top step top level will receive 1 level increase. So you have 1.5% and a level increase across the board for those employees that are not at the top level. For those employees that are at the top level, they will receive a 1.5% increase and 0.5% additional salary as well.
So a 2% increase.
A 2% increase, correct.
Okay. Top level people.
Top level people, correct. And in addition to that, some of the things, well, one of the things that we did specifically for bus drivers is there were 9 salary steps in the bus driver, salary levels in the salary scale there. So we condensed the first 3, and now the starting salary for any bus driver is $13.20 an hour, okay? That brings us well in line with what the other districts are doing across the state, and then those districts that are closest to us as well. So again, the old levels 1, 2, and 3 now move to $13.20. And the new base, the new starting salary is $13.20. And then everyone else gets 1 level increase and then the 1.5% as well. In addition to the $13.20, they also get the 1.5% increase.
Okay, so,
Go ahead, Mr. Thomas.
sorry. So if you're just finishing your first year, then you get moved up 2 steps as a collapse. I mean, you get collapsed upward, correct?
Correct.
And then you'll get this on top of that?
Correct.
Okay.
And it's 2 levels.
Okay. Levels, sorry.
Nice step.
Apologies.
It's hard for me as well.
Ms. Fields?
And when new folks start, what level are they starting at?
It's the new level 1,
Okay.
and that level 1 will be $13.20.
So training and none of that stuff is relevant. They will start at the $13.20 per hour.
Oh, no,
Training pay.
training pay, they will
Training
still
pay is still gonna be 12.
correct. Or no, 10.
10.
10.
Okay. Okay.
In talking to Mr. Davis, that's a max of
3.
about 5 weeks
3
that
to
they'll
5
be there.
weeks.
So I'm happy to report that in combination with the fact that we now have the GED and/or high school diploma as preferred, that will significantly help with, or we're hoping that it will significantly help with our bus driver shortage.
Please keep us posted, because we're hoping that as well.
Certainly.
And I asked that this be placed on the agenda, as it's on the agenda tonight as an emergency item because of the meeting today, and then later in October is our next one, but I wanted to make sure that we get this out to our employees so that also the group can then move forward on what they have to do after you all have a vote. Also, I do want to report that PEA will be asking for a special meeting with at the next work session. If we can have it to where we can take a vote so they can move forward at the next work session in 2 weeks, and that way we'll have all the employees moving within this month, and we can just start processing and moving forward.
So you want a special board meeting to be held the same
Right
day
after the work
as
session.
the work session?
Yes.
Yes, so that we can move PEA as well. Okay. Ms. Cunningham?
Just a comment, just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. That is amazing. We've had some conversations regarding this and how important it is to treat our employees with respect, and this is showing that first step in going forward. So thank you all for working through it. Thank Mr. Milhorn and everyone else, because we really needed to address this issue. I just think it's wonderful that we're doing it, and we're doing it timely. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item you have is, I'll start including where you have teaching and learning updates on programs and different things that we have going on within our district. And this is very timely at the beginning of the year that you'll have updates. Also, as part of the teaching and learning update, there'll be an update as the board, you all asked for updates regarding Bach and the enrollment of Bach North. That is coming forward to you today, and we said we'll wait till after we got 8-day count. They've been gathering all the data and the numbers, and that will be presented as well today. So I want to make sure we keep the teaching and learning component in front of you so that we keep you abreast on the things that are going on within our district.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
If Jason said his presentation was 2 minutes, that should give me an hour and a half. I'm excited about coming before you today. There's really twofold reasons that the superintendent wanted us to bring this today. One was for you to get a comprehensive overview of what we got going on within the district with our instructional programs. The second is kind of like a pre-workshop for what we're going to do with our strategic planning session. I think this lays some really great groundwork that you can then do some follow-up question and answers in preparation for that. Excited about this afternoon, and as y'all know, anytime I have the opportunity to talk about the good things we have going on in our classrooms, I am glad to do that. Today what I'm going to share with you is not just the work of Michael Akes, but a great team that sits behind me that really works hard day in, day out, night and day for this district, and I'm proud to represent them. Also, it represents the work of 6,000 some employees with our teachers and our support staff. So right off the bat, one of the things I want to make sure that I share with you is that as we become a B school district, our way of work actually has to evolve. We're no longer looking at becoming that B district, we're now looking at becoming that A school district. So what does that mean to us? Our way of work has to evolve into that. We're no longer turning around struggling schools, we're actually making good schools great and great schools better. In other words, the work that it takes for a D school or an F school to become a C is different than that work than it takes to make the B school an A school. And that's one of the things that the superintendent has actually charged us with is what does that work look like, what does that support look like, and today I'll be sharing that with you. Right off the bat, one of the things that you've heard me talk or share or with my principals, one of the things we talk about is we have to ensure that we're working with standards-based instruction. And this is kind of what we call an order one, foundational skill is that we have all of our standards-based instruction curriculum maps in place. Last year when we worked on this with our principals, we didn't spend a lot of times when we talked about the depth of the standard with our teaching force, but we actually worked a lot of time with our principals and APs. This was the pre-work for this year. And this year, one of the things we're working on with LSI and Marzano is actually making sure that when we're teaching to the standard, teaching to the depth of the standard, do the learning targets and the task align with the standard? And let me kind of put this into I guess, the terms that I can kind of grasp is that you have a standard that a teacher would be instructing on. But the question begs is, what do you want the students to learn? That's your learning target. And then the shift becomes not so much what the teacher is doing, but actually the task at the student station. Does the task, what the student is working on, does it align to the target? Does it align to the standard? And those are the things that we will be working this year with teams from each school to actually design a process by which they would evolve and do this. A lot of times whenever you hear things like this that come across a teacher's desk or a school's desk, a lot of times they think, well, the district is saying we got to have learning targets posted or we got to have this done within our lesson plans. That's far from the truth with this situation. What we are encouraging our schools to do is this. What's your instructional focus for your school? What's the vision for it? And how does this align to the standard, the learning task, and the learning target? So as we evolve this year, you'll see some of that and you'll hear some of that. That'll ensure that we're teaching to the depth of the standards. The next you have there is that when we're doing this, the curriculum maps, which covers the year, we're actually starting to include those learning targets with them, trying to make it a little more teacher-friendly, if you will. The power is still in the process of that teacher doing the work, but we try to make it as consumable and as accessible as we can for our teachers. We have a week at a glance for all of our principals when they're looking at our tested subject areas. We're taking on the next thing down there is what we call our building block courses. I would actually put me an asterisk beside that one because that is brand new this year. Again, the work's changing. No longer can we look at just 8th grade science. We've got to start looking at 7th grade science. So what I've tasked our staff to do, working with principals and teachers, is to look at what we call building block courses and say this. If you want to be able to do this in 8th grade science, what is the outcome for 7th grade? So 7th grade science will now have a pacing guide, it'll have a curriculum map, it'll have a week at a glance, and we'll also be looking at some quarterly assessments with that. Why? Because we're no longer trying to be a B, we're trying to be an A. So as you can imagine, if we're looking at 7th grade science this year, then the question is where will we go next year? We'll start looking at 6th grade science. The same thing in elementary school. We've been focusing on 5th grade science, so all those building block courses, there'll be a progression, and I'll share more of that as we go through this. We've talked a lot about quarterly assessments. We'll talk some more about that when we get to the AA&E calendar for the assessments for it. And the new one down there is also distributive leadership. Really trying to work with our schools, to work with our assistant principals and teams to make sure that this does not all fall on one administrator within a school, but actually a team. And this is something I'm very excited about. Literacy for our school district, to me, I've asterisked it as one that must move. When we get to the strategic plan, we'll be talking about that. But to move this school district, primary grades is where we got to start focusing on. It really goes back to the same premise of building block courses. If you want third grade reading to move, K1 and 2 has to move. Ms. Bird will then tell you, well, if you want kindergarten to move, then you got to do preschool and pre-K. So that's why the sites like Gibbon Street is so powerful to our school district, because those are the things that'll move it. I can't stress that enough. The more that we invest with K1 and 2 preschool and 0 to 5, this school district will move. It'll become an A school district. Promoting informational text, ramping up intensive reading. We're going to start connecting intensive reading to our social studies and science classes. What does that mean? The actual text that students need to be able to access in social studies or those science classes, we'll start pulling those texts into the intensive reading classes. We're going to start really ramping up reading endorsement, offering those opportunities for our teachers. There's also a statute that requires that. We want to have defined writing outcomes in our curriculum maps. One of the things that I stumbled upon when I worked with some teachers and with some principals in elementary is that they were actually struggling with what does good look like for a kindergarten student at Christmas time, their writing. So we're actually going to our actual teachers, finding those exemplars and uploading those into the map. I'm really excited about that. So across the district, we'll be able to say this is what a first grade student should be doing by Christmas time or the first 9 weeks. We're also making sure that we have a district writing cadre where we have teachers, principals, APs, and our district folks that are actually working with those maps and what we should be doing. And again, as I've spoken, the strengthening of pre-K and the VPK is monumental for our school district. If you think about it this way, only 50% of our students are coming kindergarten ready. Only 50% of our students are entering third grade ready. Only 50% of our students are entering high school ready to read. That gap occurs before we get into kindergarten. So everything we can do to help move that, we've got to be able to do. Move that needle, the district moves. Social studies, real excited about what we got going on with that. Superintendent made it very clear that she expects this to continue forward. We've looked at, again, standards-based instruction, connecting those curriculums that will be needed in social studies to intensive reading, making sure that civic is spot on. I've tasked the team to make sure that we're in every civics class in the school district. Again, looking at what are the building block courses for that, and meeting quarterly with our civics teachers and U.S. history and social studies teachers. Science, again, that standards-based instruction. Making sure that science is actually a good balance between foundational instruction and inquiry. Sometimes we get the pendulum swings one way too much or the other, and I think it's got to be that just right mix of that. We talked about how to move 5th grade science. We've got to start looking at 4th grade science, and then the next year look at 3rd grade. And connecting that science to the intensive reading, and again, meeting with our teachers on quarterly meeting times to ensure that we understand what their needs are. Mathematics, K1 and 2 again. One of the premises that I think that when we look at K1 and 2, especially with mathematics, we stepped away from those math facts that we needed to be looking at and working with our students with. I think this occurred not by any fault of the teachers, but when we shifted to Common Core, some of that we got away from those foundational skills. And one of the things that I've asked the team to do is work with our regionals, work with our elementary principals and teachers, and really build those math facts and fluencies into those maps and working with our students with it. Again, that gap occurs before 3rd grade, it occurs before 5th, and when you walk into a pre-algebra or algebra class, and a student is actually trying to do the multiplication tables on their fingers, it happens in K1 and 2. It doesn't just happen in middle school, so I'm excited about that particular piece. Making sure we have grade level expectations for math. The next one to me is monumental, and it has to do with math certifications. One of the things we know is that half of our teaching force that we're hiring today is not from the teaching field. And one of the things that we're really seeing is within our math area, reading area, and some of our other core areas, is they need that certification to really boost their skills within it. So we're going to really start working on that. We've got some good things going on with the math certification piece and offering that. Quarterly meetings. This year is math textbook adoption time, so that will pose another opportunity for us to work with our math teachers. Supplemental programs. This is the same list we had last year. There will be nothing new that's added to teachers with this. But one of the things that we need to realize, again, the work has to change if we're going to become that next step at a school district. So not just giving the star reading in math, but looking at the instructional components for it. So it'll actually identify within a class, within a school, the strands that a school is struggling with or a class is struggling with. iStation Reading and Math had that last year, going to continue it. But again, what is the right mix of that online reading program? What does that look like? And sometimes those decisions are student by student. And so really trying to help schools, help teachers realize that that intervention that we have up there, what's the right mix for it? And that's the next step for that program. Same thing with Imagine Math and Achieve 3000. Achieve 3000 is really a 6th through 10th grade intensive reading curriculum. But again, what is that right mix? Is it 1 article a week, 2 articles a week? Also, what does it look like when we bring the science articles and the social studies articles in there? Those are times whenever we start leveraging that great things start to happen. Seeing some really good movement this past year in our intensive reading as far as the mechanics of teaching reading, and I know we'll do even more good this year whenever we start offering that reading endorsement and connecting it back to science and social studies. As y'all know, I can say this without hesitation, it's no longer acceptable in the school district for you to have a D or an F school. We're closing it this year. We will not have any more D or F schools after this school year. We're going to move them. And so the question is, how do we support A, B, and C schools? The superintendent, working with Mr. Hill and the regionals, we're starting to look at what that support looks like. How do we help a good school get better? How do we help a great school get even better? And really, it's working on some of those core instructional practices. So the superintendent and I and Mr. Hill are working on what we call some afternoon sessions where we work with principals and APs after school hours, working with what that should look like. And I'm excited about the opportunity to be able to do that with our current leadership staff. This kind of encapsulates what we're doing to ramp the instructional practices of our coaches up. We've committed to working with each one of our schools, have an instructional coach. And the question is, how can we best utilize that to strengthen our teaching force? So we're implementing a coaching framework that works around tasks, PLCs, and direct teacher support. We've got a training program for our new coaches, and we actually have an Aspiring Coaches Academy. Again, moving the school district from a B to an A, move this one, great things happen. I'm committed to that, and I know that it'll work. Performance Matters, you just got through approving a contract for Performance Matters. And I think that it's important that you realize the next steps with that. No longer is it do we just take and give an assessment, give a quarterly, import star data into it. The question is, how can we utilize Performance Matters to identify students who are struggling? That's the last bullet down there. Then it becomes not just a tool to house instruction or house those assessments in, but it becomes a very powerful tool to identify students who need extra support. So that's the next steps with this. I got to tell you, some schools are actually doing great work with this. We have the type of staff within schools that they're just really run out. I mean, they're doing a lot better with it than I've ever been able to do with it. They show me some tricks with it. Focus, new SIS system. You pair Focus and you pair Performance Matters together, we're getting ready to really do some great things. One of the things that Ms. Bird has tasked me with doing is going to schools and identifying areas within a school, within a school district that we can improve. Focus is that next step. It is really a wonderful tool. You'll start seeing some of that work. I actually start with a high school tomorrow that I'll be doing that with, and I'm very excited about that. You can identify groups of students that need to be in credit recovery, groups of students that need to be in intensive reading. It's a very powerful tool. Dr. Barrios is about got, she's lost a few sleepless nights over it, but it's been well worth it. We're getting there. Next two really deal with achievement gaps. The first one here deals with our students with disabilities, and the next one deals with our ESOL students. We moved these two subgroups, we moved the district. We got a lot of writing on this. Superintendent has mixed no words on making sure that we move the proficiency for our students with disabilities and opportunities that ensuring that all students have. Same thing with our ESOL students. We've got some great instructional practices we're putting into place for them. Some of those range from just ESOL strategies that are in a class, sheltered bilingual instruction or dual language for some schools. We've got a developmental language course that we have in secondary course. We've got to make sure that we got that implemented. And I got to tell you, we've just developed an ESOL placement guidelines, and we're affirming currently as we speak what's the appropriate curriculum for those ESOL classrooms, and that depends really school by school. When a school has 30 ESOL students, what is needed there is totally different an opportunity you can do compared to a student that has 300. So I look at it as a great opportunity, because when you have 300 ESOL students, you can do so many different type of interventions for them. I think it's actually harder the smaller the group is. So I'm excited about what we got going on with that, and we'll make the next step with this. I'm confident of that. The next one is actually AVID. This is a new program that we implemented last year. The intent of AVID is to actually look at secondary students that are in the middle. And I say in the middle, these are students that would be high level 2s, low level 3s as their reading level. And these are students that if somebody were able to stop and really look at what they have going on within their schooling, we would say these students are not engaged enough into their education. These students need somebody who actually takes and encourages them, tells them they can make the next step. That's what AVID is about. So whenever a school chooses to do AVID, and really this is the coalition of the willing, the regionals put that out to our secondary schools. We started a group last year. We added a few more secondary schools this year, and I'll get Ms. Buffy Williams to share that with you in a minute. But I got to tell you, this really is a game changer for the school district. For the schools that have committed to it and that are doing it, what you're going to see is a group of students that will start to come through that were low-level 3s, high-level 2s, that are starting to think beyond high school. In other words, we spend an ornate amount of time looking at the lower quartile. What are we doing to move reading? What are we doing to ensure that our math skills are moving up? These are kids that are literally caught in the middle, and AVID works with that. And it gets them to think and dream beyond high school. A lot of times these students will be the ones that will be first generation college goers for a family. SAOs, they're up and going. I know that you probably had a few phone calls about this, but if you'll remember back in the spring we did an overview of this. Again, I think this is a game changer for our school district. It connects the everyday work of a teacher, of a staff member, to their evaluation. The superintendent and the union work this out together. I've been tasked to work with this and make sure that it goes off, and I think that we're doing an admirable job with this. The PD department under Ms. Joe and Jennifer Rouse has really worked hard with Mary Ann and our staff with this, so this is moving great. We're going to have some bumps this first year, but I'm going to tell you, when teachers really dig into the standards, what their students are struggling with, and take authority and autonomy over this, great things start to work. And we'll see that. First year is a little bit rough. After that, we'll be really moving some great things. This is an area that, moving our level 4s and 5s, I think this is an underserved group of students. I think we got to start asking ourselves, are we meeting the needs of our level 4s and 5s? And when we see that these students are not getting learning gains, that they regress, we got to start making ways with this. We'll continue to do this elementary, middle, and high school, but specifically that AP participation. It could be IB or ACE. You could term it either way you want to. But I think we've got to increase the participation in these courses. We've got to push our students harder. Hence, AVID would be in place. But we also got to ensure equity in these classes, and that's something that I've tasked the Office of Acceleration, but also down Mr. Miller to look at this with Ms. Dawson, because I think that there's ground to be gained with this, and I think that ensuring that all students are in these courses and challenged, and start gauging ourselves by the number of students that are accepted to top 100 colleges throughout the United States. Graduation rate is moving. It's moving because of the strategies we put into place. Something up there that you need to be proud of is the fact that when you talk about what are we doing to increase credit recovery efforts, you just approved an Edgenuity contract. That's what it goes to right there, some of it with virtual. You've also approved over the last 2 years changes within the SPP that reduce retentions at the middle school and elementary level. So graduation rate will continue to rise. I have no doubt within a 3-year period will be in excess of 80%, and it'll be because of the hard work of the staff at the schools. Acceleration. This really deals with CTE programs and with ACE and IB. One of the things that I'm asking in my newly acquired division down there is to make sure that we're looking at what is the health of the CTE programs we have in place. In other words, how many students are actually in those programs? What are the number of students that participate in the student organizations, that take the industry certifications? And how many students actually go into the high-wage, high-demand careers of this? I think that this is something we need to continually ask ourselves. We got some great programs, and I think as we continue to evaluate the health of those programs, great things will continue to grow. And I see even more work within the academies, more academies coming up out of the ground. Strengthening our teaching force. We've talked about this in several of them. One of the things that we are faced with the teacher shortages, that 50% of them, our teaching force is not coming from educational colleges. HR has done an admirable job of getting those teachers hired this year. I think we're below 50 openings right now for what we have open out there, and that's unbelievable compared to this time last year. But our teachers are struggling with passing the general knowledge. The professional development department, along with PEA, is working together on coursework that actually supports teachers to do that. Our math and science departments are working to support teachers in that area, and the math certification we've talked about. We've also geared the PD department to look at the areas that teachers are struggling the most with when it comes to the evaluation piece, and we've put some specific courses in place for that. Reading endorsement has got to move, and we know that. We're going to be looking at some resources for that. I'm not sure that you realize everything we have going on with instructional leadership within our school district. One of the new programs, Aspiring Leaders, Teacher Leader programs, actually was spawned out of HR. The Aspiring Coaches Academy would be the next step for somebody that was really wanting to go into leadership or coaching. We got a new Coaches Academy. These are little steps that we would want each one of our leaders to take as they go through the ranks. We got an Aspiring Leaders program, which is an AP training program that Ms. Joe and Mr. Runyon work on that together, our new Director of PD. Distributive Leadership program, which I've talked about, that's the next step with this. We work in partnership for our principal program, and we work with that with the Gulf Coast Partnership through USF. And what this does is we have about 25 or 30 APs that want to become principals, and they go through this program. When Ms. Joe and I sat down and we looked at the strength of it, what this does is it allows our principals, our aspiring principals, to go over there and be in the mix of aspiring principals from Hillsborough, from Pinellas, from Manatee County, and work together on the core practices that we need to sharpen up to become a principal. And I'm not sure you're aware that we have actually a turnaround principals program that's in place. This past year we had 3 participants that are currently in the program over there, 3 heavy hitters, and I'm excited about that. We lean on them. One of them is actually Michael Young. And we're starting a second cohort, and we'll have 3 more participants. What do? We're actually planning for these staff members to get their specialist degree. Of course, they have to commit to continuing to be with us for a period of time. And where do we want to go with this? One day, I'd like us to be able to do a doctoral program over there with UCF. And again, it takes that leader that wants to continue to make those steps, and we're investing in our workforce when we do this. Again, the way our work has to change is continuing to evolve. I'm excited about the things we have going on, but I got to tell you, it's a great team. It's a great group effort. It's not one person. It's many struggling hours for the people who support this district. When we're looking at the work that we have going on, and if you think about it, the magnitude of it, 105,000 kids, 150 sites, 100 schools that have grades. We really try to contextualize the strategies we put into place for the sites where they're at. And I think that the principals and the regionals and the departments are doing a great job with that. Got a couple more things. Are there any questions?
I know that was a lot, but I wanted to make sure that we provide an overview early on so that you see all the things we have laid out. Our well work has shifted, because you can no longer work on just working on getting out of the trench now that we're out. We gotta move forward, and this is why. And I'll tell you that when we go and we're visiting schools now, the teachers are actually grabbing for everything. You know, where's my data? That was the first thing we heard at the beginning of the year. Where's my data? We want to start looking at our kids already. The systems that are in place now, they have real-time data at their fingertips, which is very important when you're talking about working with kids, because that means a teacher now can change their instructional practices based on what Michael needs, what Sarah needs, what Jackie needs at that point. And I saw it last week when I was at Spook Hill in small group instruction, and the teacher had the data and she was able to address that. That's how we change kids. Our thing now is, how do we make our students proficient? How do we get to proficiency? We want to get over to 50% in all proficiency areas, because then when we get kids proficient in reading, proficient in math, proficient in science, they're ready to keep taking those next steps and get into all of these advanced courses. So I'm excited about the work that we have going on as a district in the schools, and the work the teachers are doing. The SAOs are going to push them, and they have the buy-in to do that, to help drive that as well. So it's very excellent on what's happening. And I don't know if you have questions for Ms. Fields.
Well, I don't know if it's a question or just an observation. This is a heavy lift, and it's overwhelming. So what are we doing to ensure that the staff don't become overwhelmed? If that makes sense.
That's really a great question. And whenever you look at each one of these slides or areas that you're working with, I think it's important to really put yourself into the stakeholders' position that we're talking about. Well, let's take the teacher, for example. When we started planning, and we literally will start this time this year, looking at next year, the question is, what's going on new for a teacher? If I'm a 4th grade teacher, what's new? So we wanted to make sure we didn't change anything with our curriculum pieces, nothing with our supplemental programs. In other words, the things that were in place last year are the things that are in place this year. The new things that are come about for a teacher that would be a stressor for a 4th grade teacher would be, I'm now on focus, so I got to figure out my grade book. So we were actually thinking through that particular piece, making sure that we knew SAOs was going to be a stressor. So we purposefully held back on implementing any new curriculum pieces. But when I said we just want to get better at it, that's literally what we want to be able to do with the example that we're talking about. So I think looking at the particular stakeholder and their position, I will tell you the piece that if you're asking what, and my team behind me will be like, oh my God, it really, the district staff is where the lift is right now. Dr. Barrios with Focus, I mean, that's where the lift is. We try to make everything, we try to shelter that teacher and the principal. I'll tell you that's one of the things Mr. Hill and the regionals are about. Keep it out of that principal's hair, keep it out of that teacher's hair until we are sure that we're ready to ease into it. The principals have a lot going on, I'll tell you that. Again, because their way of work is changing. And they're starting to say, oh my God, I don't need to be spending time on this. That's what the distributive leadership and those afternoon sessions are about. I need to spend more time on this. So, you know, being purposeful and thoughtful when we implement something, ensuring that we're not overwhelming, having cognitive confusion for a teacher is very, very important. And taking it one bite size at a time. That's why we only looked at 5th grade. We're talking about 5th grade science. Let's get 5th grade science. This year we're only talking about 4th grade science. Well, the year after that, we'll be adding another piece that we look at, which will be 3rd grade. Great question.
I'll also say one of the things that we did look at, and the team really did work, I think this was last year, We looked at all the supplemental pieces of material we had out there. How many did we have? It was in the hundreds.
It was hundreds.
It was hundreds. And so we looked at what was the most effective, what were we getting results from, and what are the ones that the teacher said, this is something that we can use and we just maybe need to ramp it up or tweak it to probably what's recent and what's current. And so we got rid of a lot of those additional supplemental pieces of material that just really wasn't doing anything. They were just doing it, but it wasn't yielding anything for the teacher in itself. And we've narrowed that down to where what you see now is probably less than 10, I think, that we have out there,
It's literally the ones we have up there.
which is the same as what we did when we looked at the testing calendar. How many assessments are we giving out there? And I think that was about 120 that we took off of that calendar.
We decreased by the assessments by 120. That's one of the pieces I want to make sure y'all realize when we looked at
I
that.
don't think that that's understood. I don't think that the public understands that
Yes,
there's
ma'am.
been a significant reduction in testing, because I hear it a lot.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with you. That's why I think that what we wanted to do is on the front end, make sure that we provided this information, and then any questions or comments like that that you were thinking of, well, how many tests did we reduce it by? You know, what is the workload change? I think that's real critical that we share that information.
Ms. Cunningham?
Just a comment, going back to your presentation on page 10 regarding acceleration. I believe in my heart, having gone around our schools, one of the greatest assets that we have going on is our academies. Because talking to students as well as teachers and parents, all children want to belong. When you're part of a small learning academy within a large high school, let's say, you find a place that you belong, which makes you want to come to school, it makes you want to be there. It's the hook for some of the children, certainly not all. So I'd be very encouraged, because when all this came out about Polk being a B district, I've had more than one person tell me, you know, one of the major reasons why, and of course I say, no, what do you think? And their comment to me was, because we have these academies throughout the district, and it's allowing children an opportunity to be in a small learning environment and feel like they're part of it and they belong. So I'm very excited to find out, as you said, you know, what are the percentages, whatever. But at the same time, I say caution to the wind. Maybe they're not all getting certified, or maybe that particular program doesn't end with a certification. Let's be careful in how we evaluate those, because I hear nothing but positive comments from A to Z. I don't care if the academy's at Ridge Community High School or at the Lakeland Aerospace Academy, and everywhere in between, really great things. So I'll be curious to hear what you find out as far as numbers, but I think they're absolutely awesome in changing the dynamics of our kids and giving them opportunities and getting them engaged, where maybe in the past they were just kind of the ones in the middle, as you called them, if you will.
I think that I agree with you 100%. And I think the superintendent would, without hesitation, agree that we believe that not all kids should go to college, but we do think that all kids should be looking at a high-wage, high-demand career. And that's what academies should be doing. And I think that if we're identifying anything, it may be opportunities where we can have a little more diversity in the academies or programs, as you know, with CTE, and making sure that all schools have those really opportunities as well. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Townsend?
Just to pick up on Lori's point real quick, which is a really good one. And I think it's sort of, by the way, this is a really good document. I'm going to come to that in a second. But I think when you look at some of the video academies and you look at some of the video certification things we're doing, and then you look at, say, the entries for the video awards, there's a little bit of a tension there. We're losing, I think, on some of the creative stuff on the video side of things, because there's so much focus on certifications, and I think that's a constant balance in education as a whole. It's which one of these sort of certifications are useful. I mean, I would rather my child learn how to use and create than just earn a a certification that may or may not be of any use to him. This is not a criticism. It's a thing to think about as we're moving ahead on those things. And I think it kind of runs through all of this. Again, I really appreciate this. I mean, I don't think it will surprise anybody. There's some stuff I want to engage in here, but you know, that really is the tension as we move ahead to manage how we create educational experiences that are real and that benefit kids beyond just what their test score says, that they can take off into life and make meaningful, versus doing the things we have to do to meet whatever the requirements are. And this is just a very helpful document. One other quick question, and I think we had a big jump in the Algebra 1 pass rates and the civics pass rates this year. We had, we had one of the largest in the state. And I think on the Algebra 1 version, it's because we spread it out, like we gave the 1A and 1B, which I think is a great idea. It gives kids time to learn. I mean, one of the problems with standards is you're racing through them and you don't get a chance to learn. My question is, what sort of snapback should we expect? Because I think almost certainly there was some sequencing done in how kids took the test. We're probably going to see a snapback in civics and Algebra 1, Algebra 1B. I would encourage you guys to kind of prepare us for that, prepare the public for that, because it's a different way we're doing things. I'm supportive of it, but I think the more you anticipate and talk about that, the better it's going to be.
Okay, so Algebra 1 and civics. That really has to do with course progressions. But this is what I'll say. Yes, we had one of the largest increases in Algebra 1 and civics, but we also did the same thing for middle school acceleration. In other words, we had more students take Algebra 1 in middle school this year than we've ever had, almost 1,000 more, and we had more pass it. So it's an expectation piece. So yes, some of it may be contributed to the fact that we had Algebra 1 and Algebra 1A and Algebra 1B, but some of it really is attributed to right course, right time, right teacher, great things happen. Should we expect that the students that go into Algebra 1B, might they struggle? Yeah, they may struggle some, but it goes back to the point you actually made. When they have the time spread out over 2 years, better things will happen. And we're preparing for that, ensuring that the rigor is there. Civics, that's why social studies is and civics is on a separate page there. Again, the one course that we've been in every classroom in this district is civics. And what I've encouraged and challenged the team to do is to take the things that we learned this past year about what works and make sure that we're replicating that. And the second piece to that will be the long game of looking at what things can we do in 7th grade with U.S. history to prepare them for civics for the next year. So we're working hard to ensure that those pieces are mitigated. But I think that as we go through, we'll continue to get better with them.
Any questions? Okay.
Great presentation.
Okay, so Ms. Bird actually took one of my bullet points, was the reduction in testing. Thank you, Ms. Bird. In closing with the instructional overview, I need to apologize to Polk State. Our actual college fair that we have at Southeastern is tonight. I got some feedback from y'all on that. I promise you.
I want to go.
I do too. We didn't get to set that date this year. It didn't last year because I remember the same thing happened. But we're asking, because it's a rotation. The whole group of colleges and universities come and do a rotation this week. And so we're asking to not be Tuesday night next year. And we'll try to be able to get that done for you. But I do plan to go over there tonight after we get through the board meeting, even if it's for the last little bit of it. I get to see so many of our parents and kids, and they're having a great time. So
the next item that, and they have the handouts coming around. A couple of work sessions ago, there was a question that was asked about the enrollment and ensuring about the Bach North enrollment. So again, after they did the count, the team started looking at the enrollment of the charter, and they're going to present the findings at this time.
So One of my new opportunities is that charter school
I love that, he said that.
There was some shifting done.
She always says that, and she kind of, her eyes kind of twinkle when she says it. So, I do think that tonight what we want to do is be able to look at how the enrollment of Lake Wales Charter School is going, that actual system down there. And the things that we'll look at tonight will be the data pieces of it, and also state statute, board policy, and the things that drive that. So that's what Ms. Bird wanted to make sure that we captured for you tonight. So when we're looking at it, right off the bat,
So we know that Lake Wales charter school system was created to serve with the Lake Wales community. And one of the concerns that we've had and that you all have expressed over the years is the increasing number of students who do not live in Lake Wales but attend the Lake Wales schools. So
when we started looking at that, 2 contracts were actually charter school contracts in areas were of concern. First, the question is, well, are they enrolling Lake Wales students, or are they enrolling a lot of district students? And the question that we then stumbled upon was, well, what students are they actually sending back to us? And so when we started looking at the data, we realized that Lake Wales had actually returned 204 students to the district schools.
Over what period of time?
Of the 204, there were 138 that were actually not proficient with reading. So 67% of the students that came back from Lake Wales were not proficient. 19% of those were students with disabilities. And currently, the Lake Wales Charter Schools only serve 9% of their student body with students with disabilities. So when I'm looking at this, again, I'm just pulling the data. There were 2 sources that we looked at with this. First source we looked at, we asked Sandy and her department to pull up from AA&E, completely outside of charter department, pull up the actual data and disaggregate it for us. Then I asked Melissa to pull it up in her department, and then we crosswalked both sets of data. So we're very confident that this data is accurate. But the next one is really kind of highlights the concern. So they sent us 204 back, 67 were not proficient, okay? So when we had Bach North come about and the school board approved the Bach North charter school application, they enrolled 198 students. Approximately 50% of those were not from Lake Wales, and they weren't from McLaughlin. In other words, we're kind of conceding that a student in Lake Wales, high school or middle school, could be going to a Lake Wales school. The 50% of that population was not from that. Of that, 106 of the students that they did enroll were from our district schools, should be still in our district schools, and 74% of them were proficient. So they're giving us back students at the rate of 30% proficiency, but the ones that are taking from us are 74% proficient. We actually had some school principals that stumbled into this and brought it to our attention, so we literally disaggregated the data both ways that I've described to you. One, AA&E pulled it, then I had Melissa pull it out of her department.
So we had some assurances from Mr. Gibson, who is a lawyer for Lake Wales Charter Schools, when they brought forward the Bach North contract, and he specifically stated that if, in fact, the Polk County School Board would approve that application, that they would grant priority enrollment to Lake Wales students. We were hoping to see that with their enrollment. Unfortunately, we didn't see that. Their contract language, we worked very hard to put contract language that would speak directly to the issue that we had seen. And so we put into the contract that no students living outside of the defined reasonable distance, is what we used, shall be accepted to the school until 100% of the students living within a reasonable distance are accepted. And if you go to the next slide, the very last priority that statute allows a charter school to give to enrolling students is, of course, reasonable distance. So that's why we use that language in the contract, so that we could define the distance to the school, which would have been the Lake Wales area, to the students given priority to enrollment.
So when we look at what's going on with Bach North, one of the things we're looking at is a concern that, again, the students that should be going there are actually being returned to the district. And whenever they are enrolling students, 50% of them, approximately half of that population, should be going to our school district schools. And the disparity between the students with disabilities, the ones they're accepting and the ones that they're actually sending back our way, and the proficient versus the non-proficient. I think that whenever we look at enrollment, working together to look at that and monitoring that application process very aggressively, we need to be able to tighten that piece up with Bach North.
Oh, are you done, or?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I was like, okay. Wait.
We'd like to bring forward a recommendation for how to continue the monitoring process of Bach North. And so we would like to recommend that we require a recruitment plan that they put together this year, approved by both the Lake Wales Board of Directors and the Polk County School Board, that demonstrates how Lake Wales students will be targeted and prioritized for enrollment. The plan will include dates for the following: open enrollment, lottery drawing, and final student enrollment. The reports would be due to the district. District staff would then create the timeline for the required school reports due to the district and the communication to the board. So we would like to be able to bring forward to you on a consistent basis what that looks like, and we would put a timeline together for that.
Okay, next opportunity, Lake Wales High School. If you'll kind of recall, 2 board meetings ago, maybe 3, there was a request to grant so many new seats to Lake Wales High School. We went above and beyond, not only approved that amount, but actually the maximum amount that we felt that their school could handle. It was up to 120 new seats. Of those 120 new seats, 24 of those newly enrolled students at Lake that we know and we've been able to confirm completely should be in our high schools. They're not zoned for McLaughlin, and they do not live in Lake Wales. And whenever you look at that, again, on the front end, the discussion was that you'll take Lake Wales school students first and not districts that leave out from outside that zone. How did we become aware of that? Again, we had students trying to enroll in our schools that we knew lived in Lake Wales that were being turned around saying, they don't have room there. Okay, so we literally had to work student by student on this to try to get them a seat at Lake Wales High School. Again, asked for 120 more seats, and we were able to confirm that 100 of that 120, 24 did not live down there. And I think that's the concerning part, is that piece of being now at maximum enrollment. So.
The contract language, this is just for your benefit, specifically states that the priority enrollment would ensure that students residing closest to the charter school would be provided an enrollment preference. That is charter statute for a conversion school specifically, which Lake Wales High School is. We feel like the issue is really driven by recruitment and the lack of effort really to really maximize focus on the students who live within the Lake Wales area, and also the recruiting from McLaughlin. We know that there was some of that that happened this past year. We're hoping that those efforts increase this coming year. We have been able to work with Lake Wales High School administration over the last few weeks, from the first day of school actually. When parents do call the district, people accounting then calls Ms. Tangson then calls me. There's a chain of action that happens. I then call the principal of Lake Wales High School, Mrs. Dunson, and we get on it and figure out where these kids are on the waiting list. Did they apply? That's the first question. If they didn't apply, then we recommend that they go back to the school and apply. If they are a Lake Wales child, then they are put on the waiting list, and then they are accepted according to the waiting list. We have had some instances where there have been children who have declined their return to Lake Wales High School last year, but then went to their zone school and decided they wanted to go back to Lake Wales High School. There's been a little bit of hopping around, but in every case, we've been able to address it. We've been able to send it back. There has been some question about the capacity of the facility, and we are working to arrange a tour with Mrs. Usher so that we can go over there and find out what is needed in order to take on the maximum amount of students. We've been asked by the administration to do that, so that's in the works now.
As we continue to look forward on this, I think that what the charter school department is needing really from our end is direction from the school board on what we need to be able to do about it. The piece that I guess from our concern when we look at it is that we work through applications and the school board enters in good faith that both of these situations would be for Lake Wales students. And I've yet to hear a school board member say anything different. We want Lake Wales students, if that's where they want to be, is in Lake Wales. The issue becomes the 200 that they send back to us, the disparity in the reading level, and the fact that they're students with disabilities, and the fact that we're paying for busing back into our district schools. So I think the piece that, we want to be able to, work hand in hand for if that's where the students want to go. I think that's a piece that nobody is argued about. The issue becomes that the data shows without hesitation the ones you're sending back are not the same students that you're taking from our district. And I think that's the disparity that is the most concerning in the situation.
We'd like to also, we've kicked this idea around of an exit survey. So any child that exits a charter school and they re-enter a district school, we'd like to find out why. And because in that way, that will give us some real hard data to show us whether or not it was because the parents felt coerced to leave the school, or if in fact it was their own decision, or maybe it was something that we offered that the school didn't offer, and so forth. So we're working on that as well.
Ms. Reynolds?
I have several. Thank you guys for putting this together. I really appreciate it. For the first slide, the what we know, is this the 2018-2019 school year? These 204 students returned at the beginning of the school year from last school year?
That's correct.
Okay. And I think you'd probably just answer this, but we don't know their reason for returning, if they were not invited back or if they chose to left.
The survey data is not available.
Okay.
We would literally have to go student by student to find that out. But because Focus is so transparent, we're able to get this data now without hesitation. And we do know that those students were at Lake Wales charter school system and returned to our district schools.
Okay. The 9% for the total population of ESE, that does or does not include gifted?
It probably won't. Unless you single out why.
It does not.
It does not?
It does not?
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it does not. I can pull my piece of it. I got the data piece of it
pretty bad. Are there any waiting lists for Bach at this point?
Yes, they sent a waiting list with 12 students on it, and none of those students were Lake Wales students.
Okay.
So they had 12 students that are on the waiting list, but they took half of them.
So every Lake Wales student that wants to go to Bach?
Now here's the piece that we don't know.
Is at Bach. Okay.
We know about the kids that end up in our lap because a parent said, I live down there and I can't go.
Right.
We don't know about the ones that wanted to go there, that were not accepted.
Don't say anything.
Because we just don't know that piece. We just know that 204 were some students that were there last year in the system and are no longer there.
So is everyone that applies is put on the wait list?
I couldn't
Do we
confirm
know that? Okay. So there could be students that applied living in Lake Wales that were just told, no, you're not coming here. At Bach or at Bach North or at Bach Academy.
I couldn't answer that based on the information that we have.
Okay.
I just know that the 204 that were down there are now returned back to the district.
Okay. And just to confirm for the public, the 120 Lake Wales students that were on, they asked for 54 seats, I believe, and we gave the 120 because they said they had 120 Lake Wales students on the wait list. So now 24 of those spots were taken by Winter Haven students. So there's at least 24 Lake Wales students that did not
It's not all Winter Haven.
get to go.
It's not Winter Haven, just so you know.
To draw that conclusion is
Right.
we don't know this.
Right, no, it's not Winter Haven.
You know, from any area, but they're not Lake Wales students that
Yes,
are,
Well,
We do know that.
okay.
We literally, there are other students in there that we could say, we think that this is a student that is actually should be zoned down, you know, in our zone or not, but the 24 that we're confirmed with are the students that we know are not down there, should not be.
Okay. I think that was my last one.
Mr. Harrison, Ms. Sellers.
I think Ms. Sellers was first.
Oh, I did.
Okay.
My question was, are there Lake Wales high school students that are saying now that they were turned away after we gave 120 seats, and I think we were pretty clear, we expected those to go to Lake Wales students. Are there Lake Wales students that can't get into Lake Wales High School?
Yes.
That after they stood before us and we told, and we gave them those seats for their Lake Wales students. I just don't understand this
where is that in here?
What?
I didn't hear that.
I did.
Yes,
But
she
no,
said turned away.
Yeah, she
Turned
said
away. Lake Wales High School students were turned away. And we also talked about, because if they want the whole school system, that they need to have, and we have 40 other seats that they could have, but we wanted those for when kids move into Lake Wales, that they should be able to go to the Lake Wales school and sign up. You know, they're not like a regular charter. They're the hometown school, and you shouldn't have to go to Winter Haven or Bartow when you move in October. You shouldn't have to leave town for the part of the year. You should be able to be accepted. And have they addressed that at all?
That's one of the reasons why they've asked us to visit their campus to look at their facility, because they need portables. And so in order to accommodate more students.
But they took
Yeah,
24
I think
outside the district and turned down their
Yes,
own
ma'am.
kids once again.
The other thing that I think, just to be very, very transparent about it, there are other students that are enrolled in either Lake Wales High School or Bach that our district, that we should be going to our district schools. We're not saying anything about those students. In other words, a 10th grader that was in their 9th grade that continues on up, that's not the piece we're talking
No,
about.
these are new students they
That's right.
took
I just wanna make
after
sure.
we gave them the
And the other thing
120.
that, the pieces that we've been trying to address, that whenever we do call the high school that they do address, is when we find a student that is trying to enroll, that's been turned away, they've been working with Melissa to try to get that student a seat. The problem is, there's so many other students that we don't ever find out about. That's the piece that's concerned with.
Mr. Harrison, Mr. Townsend.
Observation and a suggestion. This is somewhat like what we faced at Citrus Ridge. And years before, we also faced it in Winter Haven when we built the elementary school off Thompson Nursery Road. We don't know and have no way of knowing the existence of kids when they've never been enrolled in Polk County schools, even if they live here. And that's the problem that we face when a person moves to town or already lives here, but their children do not attend our school. They aren't on our radar. Then all of a sudden they show up at Lake Wales High School and they want to enroll. And they weren't previously enrolled, so they're not part of the numbers that you're showing here because we had no clue that they even existed. And we had that same issue at those other two schools that I mentioned. So that's an issue that the public needs to be aware that we can't address because we don't know those kids exist when they move to town or they're here already and they don't go to one of our schools. So those kids are unknowable. A suggestion for you. On page 3, under the contract language slide, the blue section, when you read that, I'm going to then go to page 6 and read that section of the contract. No students living outside of the defined reasonable distance shall be accepted to the school until 100% of the students living within a reasonable distance are accepted. Now go to page 6. Look at the contract language in blue. And I'm going to suggest a one-word change to the contract that would solve, I think, the issue. Ensure that students residing closest to the charter school are provided with an enrollment guarantee instead of preference. There's the problem. There's no teeth in the contract that forces them to take the Lake Wales residents' kids first. The people from other communities are violating the spirit of why this charter system was created by enrolling their kids from a town other than Lake Wales. And Lake Wales is playing along and letting them do it because we have a contract that doesn't have the teeth that says they're guaranteed a spot if they live in Lake Wales. Thank you.
Mr. Townsend?
I don't know where to start on this. I want to just clarify on the turn away. Walk through the kids turned away thing with me for a second. So there was a certain number of kids who have gone to Lake Wales High recently and been told you can't come here because we don't have space. Now, some of those kids we've worked with and gotten in, all of them. Can you give me a rough percentage? Do you have any idea?
We've had 5 parents call in the last 2 weeks, and I believe we placed the 4th. One of them is still waiting because the classes that the child needs are not available. Those classrooms are full.
And was there a number of the kids we know that were turned away? Do we have that number, or is this just or is it just based on those 5? Are those the 5?
Yes, those are the only ones that I've reached to my office.
All right, so we can at least say in defense of them to some extent. We know of 5 kids who were turned away. 4 we were able to get back in by working with them. Do we know of additional kids beyond the 5 that were turned away, or is 5 the number we're talking about?
That's all I know.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Robin Ibsen is my cousin. He was at my daughter's wedding, as I always say. This is extremely disappointing. I don't know how many different ways to say how disappointing this is. S.E. Jackson actually cornered me at a meeting last week and kind of gave me wind of this. I think Sarah Beth had actually beaten everybody to it from what I understand and heard about this, so I congratulate you. That was a very good question to ask. I think this was a good use of staff time to answer a question. I think this Black North was going to go through. They were guaranteed to get approved in Tallahassee. We were just going to be fighting them. Had I known they had no plan to fully put 200 kids in their school, I would have sent them to Tallahassee to have that pointless fight, just to delay it. One of the excuses that came from Dr. Jackson to me was, well, it was kind of last minute that the school got approved. Well, let's step back for a second and remember why that was. It was because their original application was terrible, and they withdrew it. I'm sort of just thinking out loud here. What I'm hearing from, or at least from Dr. Jackson, is that the key problem here is that they can't get enough kids from their elementary schools to attend their fancy new middle school. And he said 30%. If we're saying 50%, that's even worse. You know, if they did not have a plan for doing that, they should have never opened this school. Period. It's a violation of good faith. It's made us look stupid, honestly. So what do we do now? Now, I like what we're doing with the high school. That's one of the reasons why I tried to like pin you down on the numbers. It sounds like we've got some protocols in place that we're trying to work through. I think the only way to solve this long term with them is to get our operational people and their operational people together, hold each other accountable. Tim, I'll go a step farther. Instead of saying, you guarantee them, say that compulsory education vests in their school, so that there is no sending kids back if that they have the responsibility for every kid in Lake Wales, period. I know that's illegal. I think the state of Florida, after this election, is going to be looking for creative partnerships between districts and charter schools. I bet if we came up with an MOU that imposed that we could get that through our good friends at DOE. I'd sure like to try that. Anyway, this is really, 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 really disappointing. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and we'll go from there.
Ms. Cunningham, then Ms. Fields.
Okay, a couple of things. And I didn't mean to interject when you said Winter Haven, but I know of several families that are wanting to move to Lake Wales, or their children got accepted from Frostproof. That's an area, and that's kind of an interesting area, the Babson Park, if you will, Blue Lake and all that area. Not exactly sure where the cutoff point is for Babson Park to go to Frostproof or Lake Wales, and years ago you kind of had your choice. So a lot of people do that. So I'm not sure. It would be very interesting to see what addresses those are from, because Babson Park is still considered Greater Lake Wales, if you will, even though that and Hillcrest Heights. So not sure about that. Secondly, my question is, because I see so many kids coming whose parents say, hey, we just moved in the area, we just got accepted, and they're all excited, moved in the area, we're here in Lake Wales. So I'm seeing that too. So my question is, when was this data run, is what I'm wondering. Is this up to date? It was, as of last Friday. Okay, that was one question. I agree that if we need to put teeth in the contract, I think what Mr. Harris said, I mean, would be fine to do something like that. But I also think that what Mr. Townsend said, can we work together somehow to try to get to the root of this? Because I do know that a lot of kids didn't get acceptance letters until August, till after that, the meeting I missed, the July whatever, I apologize, I don't have the date, I was out of the country. After that was actually approved, then the kids started getting acceptance letters. So what does that mean? I don't know. I'm not a CFO of a school district. That would be a Mr. Prone question, but can you enroll kids in less than 30 days and go out and do this mass marketing effort if you're not quite sure you're going to get the stamp of approval? I'm just trying to look at it from both sides. And I understand what we said way back when, but what if something turns sour at the July meeting? I don't know how the conversations went. So my question is, I would prefer a softer approach to where we would try, as he said, to work together, create a group, and figure out how this can work going forward. Because I felt like the intent was the intent. How come it didn't happen? I hate to sit here and try to second guess what they did in less than a month's time to open school. A couple weeks worth, right? From July 31 to when we start school, August 10th? Okay, so that's a real short window, and chaos, I don't know. I don't want to beg that, but I just think if we could work together and try to figure out how, because once again, it's about the kids and about the community, and let's not lose sight of that on either way that you feel. And I think as human beings, we can sit together and say, hey, what on earth happened? And maybe you've had those conversations. I don't know. But I sure think we need to do that and work together to not create the us versus them kind of feeling like we're kind of feeling today, like, hey, you didn't do what we said. Dang it, why didn't you do it? Well, nobody can answer why. There's got to be a reason, I'm sure. And what is the plan, like you said, going forward? How are we going to market better, you know, to attract more of the students and families in the greater Lake Wales area, as we said, and you defined it beautifully, as defined in the former Lake Wales High School zone. And I think Ms. Bridges brought that up a meeting or two ago when I was here, and I thought that was the best way to handle that. So I'd like to see us work together and figure this out. And then if nothing works and we go to, I mean, whatever, then you get drastic. But I think at this point, with all this happening so quickly, the numbers, quite frankly, don't surprise me. You take who comes through the door. Maybe people didn't even know. I don't, not Lake Wales, I'm talking bottom line. So.
Ms. Cunningham, I agree with you that trying to work together is always the best way to do it. But when you look at the numbers of the 204 they accepted back into their district, the ones they sent us, only 33% of those students are reading proficient, but they took a rate at 70%.
I understand.
So I don't
We
know
need
that
that.
it's just who's walking in. You know, it appears, I mean, the data itself says that they're discriminating against the kids that can't read, and they're discriminating against the ESC students. And you could even take it a step further when you go to looking at the race issue. So, I mean, when you're looking at it, they're accepting the 4s and 5s, and they're sending us the 1s and 2s.
I get that, right, I understand.
So, is it the parents who have a better understanding of the acceptance process? Well, that's really our responsibility as a community to ensure that all parents have access to
Equal access,
charter
sure,
choice.
sure.
Not just the parents who understand the enrollment process.
Ms. Tilson back, then Mr. Tower, and then Mr. Wilson.
When we last had our meeting, Mr. Gibson said that they wanted all of the kids. That's what he said. We have to take him at his face value that he does, and that the community want all their kids. We need to give them an opportunity to prove themselves worthy of what he said. I think that we need to sit down with them. Your recruitment plan is a very good idea, and I think that what they need to determine is how many seats do they need to keep empty, whatever, in order to fulfill their obligation for the Lake West students. They should figure that out. That should not be our responsibility. And then I think we have to hold their feet to the fire. Whatever we agree on, we have to monitor it on an ongoing basis and make sure that whatever they have agreed to do, that ultimately they fulfill their obligation. That's what I think we need to do.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Townsend, then Mr. Wilson, then Ms. Summers.
Well, I think to Dr. Grace's point, and you know, I think there really isn't any alternative than to get in a room with them and try to hammer something out with teeth, because Bot North exists. It was gonna exist even if we said no. They would have come back. We acted in good faith. As I understand it, McLaughlin enrollment's down a bit. Is that right? It's kind of affecting McLaughlin. It's pulling up. So now it's affecting everything.
Yeah.
You know, and there is no way past this but through it. And I would love to have you guys having this conversation with their equivalent of you across the table. And if you need an annoying board member to come and, you know, sit there with you to do it, please recruit me. But I think we offered Lake Wales. Certainly I did, and I can't speak for all of you guys, but I certainly think as a board we offered them collaboration. We said we want to collaborate with you. This shows they want to compete with us. I'm done competing. I mean, competition has done so much to damage education as a whole, because it ends up being fake. It ends up being, you know, trade different kind of kids like it's like human trap app, you know, some kind of bizarre human trafficking. It's just very disappointing, and I want to collaborate with them. I want to create a solution that preserves the art programs at McLaughlin, which they're not going to be able to pay for if it goes away. There's a million things we could do if they're willing to do them, and if we're willing to do them, we got to sit down and work the thing out. So that's where I stand on this.
Mr. Wilson, then Ms. Summers.
Well, this is incredibly disappointing to me, because I've been one of the board members who supported the Lake Wales Charter School District from the beginning. And frankly, when you go to talk to them, I would like to be there, because they looked me in the eye and promised me this wouldn't happen. And I want them to look me in the eye again and tell me why it happened, because it shouldn't have. And it's just, I can't tell you how disappointed I am with this. the point of this was to serve their community. I agree with Mrs. Cunningham. The point, we don't want to lose track of the students, but at the same time, it's not just affecting their community. I'm hearing from principals at the other schools that are losing 4s and 5 students who are 4s and 5s, and they're saying, what in the world's going on? How is this fair and relevant to us? And it's not. And as I talk to the folks in Lake Wales, they've assured me time and time again that they want those kids who have the at-risk children, who have the special needs and special need special accommodations and so forth. They assure me they want those kids, the kids who are creating challenges for them. But it appears that not so much. So Mr. Townsend's right. The only way to fix the problem is through the problem. But we need to have a face-to-face and see what in the world's going on. I mean, this is just completely inappropriate. And I understand they opened a new school, but that's their challenge, to make sure that they're getting their students into that school. And just taking the easy way out and saying we're going to take kids from surrounding schools. And I'm hearing from Frostproof, as you might imagine. They're not happy. The folks down there are not happy. And the folks from Channel Lakes and the folks from Winter Haven. So that's not a plan that's okay. So I'm very disappointed with this as well. And I'm hoping I can schedule some meetings with some of the folks over there and see if we can figure out what in the world happened.
Ms. Sellers?
I just, because of the high number of ESE kids that live in Lake Wales that have to come to other schools, where are most of the ESE children going to school that are zoned for Lake Wales but are?
We actually
Is that well, no, McLaughlin is their school. I wouldn't count those.
And we kind of don't count those either. We kind of, with the Lake Wales students that are there, but we can tell you exactly where they did go. When we take and step back away from it. Again, it's the disproportionate number.
That's what I'm seeing.
In other words, have they said, okay, the percentages even, in other words, you send us 50% rating, we give you back 50% rating. You send us 9% ESE, we give you back. If that was the issue, and also the race issue, if that was equitable, but it's not, and that's the piece that is kind of discerning with it. And I have to be, we would have never known this was an issue, just like Mr. Wilson said, but our principal started calling saying, I had these 10 4s and 5s that I had schedules for, and they're now over there. Then we had parents call us and say, I can't get in here. Then that's when Ms. Bird say, I want to know what's going on, and that's what caused the data pool.
The burden they put on their own children from their own community, you already have struggles with ESE, and then when you're having to be bussed out of town
yes, ma'am,
to another school, you put a burden on the parents, on the child, because they can't collaborate with the teachers, because they're out of town. That's the unacceptable thing. I mean, when people choose to go to another school, that's one thing. But if they're rejecting, this is my only problem, if they're rejecting some of the most challenged children, and these children are having to get on a bus and leave their town because they're told they have no space for them, that's unacceptable. And that's the one thing they have to understand. Yes, I know it takes more time and more effort and more money and more resources, but every child is precious. And for a community to take over all of the schools and then disregard these children that they should embrace and work with harder than any other children, it's just unacceptable. And the percentage of ESE children having to leave the community is way, and I can't tell from the others if there is poverty is a problem, but the neediest and poorest children can't be treated like this.
Ms. Stills?
I think that if a board member is needed, Mr. Wilson should be the one to go, because he's the one that's been meeting with the community members. Is that correct, Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, we have been meeting on a regular basis, and those are some folks. Mr. Hill and I have been meeting with them, and we have meetings scheduled with them. We'll talk about it certainly at those meetings. I hope I can get before them before then somehow. It's disappointing.
Mr. Townsend?
I just want to clarify again, because I want to try to separate the high school issue and the middle school issue in my head.
And I agree with that, yeah.
I mean, it sounds like the issue is less acute at the high school level. Like that there are, I think we said 24 kids coming in from out of county, or out of Lake Wales. Are those like the only new enroll, what's?
The number is much higher than that. It's closer to 100. The ones that we would only, that we said, we are sure these 24 should be here. In other words, the number is much higher than that. It goes back to the Frostproof kids. It goes back to the other ones, the Babson Park area. We looked at every address on this deal. It's much higher than that. We would only say with certainty the 24. And again, it goes back to what the purpose of the 120 seats were. And the downside is this, and I know that the board is committed to this. Once a student enters into a particular school, we wouldn't want to do anything to disrupt that student's education, and they know that. They know that we're going to do the right thing by kids first. So once you're in, so we're not going to do something different.
Right.
So I just think that's the disheartening part about it, is that the number is much higher, but we would only confer for the high school the 24.
Have they been enrolled since we gave them the 120? Since real
24.
2 weeks, in the last 2 weeks,
Well,
or 3 weeks, however long it was.
Of the 120, 24.
24. The 24 is over 120, that's just granted.
That's one that we would
short
think
supply.
of the address, and we're not talking about the whole 120. In other words, we could get into some, should this and should that be. But again, because the principal started calling us saying, hey, this one lives in our zone. These 4s and 5s should be with us. That's the piece that made us start looking into it.
That's no good.
So we will, the direction of the board is to have a conversation with them, and we'll get the team together. Mr. Wilson will let you know and set that up with the team. But I think it's also going to be a good point that we share this data.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. They have to see the data. Thank you so much. That concludes all discussion items, but there is one informational item that's out there, and it is facilities update. I believe you received all the facilities update from Angela. And are there any questions, or do you need her to come up and discuss anything regarding, we had the radon and we had the 5-year on there from Angela.
I have a
As well
question
as-
on the radar testing.
Ms. Oster, can you come forward? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. When I was looking at this last night, at the attachment, Kathleen Middle School and Special Holland were the 2 schools in red. If my memory serves me correctly, and I gather that means that they have the highest level of radon.
The reason in red, Mrs. Fields, we haven't tested them as yet. So the pink schools are the schools we have not tested. The trying to do results based on contiguous schools, staff try to categorize them. So it's not necessarily true, because a school next door was high means, but more than likely it will be high. But it has not been tested as yet.
So the red means that it has not been tested?
The pink.
No,
Is it red?
I'm talking about
It's
the red.
red.
There were 2 reds. There were 2 schools in red. That was Special Holland and Kathleen Middle.
That's
one
correct.
of the buildings. And I'm just trying to understand what that means.
Okay, I just back up a bit. All the pink schools have not been tested. In the last column that says testing results, that's staff's guess based on proximity to other schools that have been tested. And they believe that more than likely, Special Holland will come in as a red. But it has not been tested, none of the schools in pink. But we think that Special Holland will be high.
Okay. And the same for Kathleen Middle.
Right, exactly, we think that they'll come in high.
Is there any other questions? Okay, and then that was then you had the 5-year facilities master
Yeah,
plan.
I don't really have any questions, Ms. Jackie, but I want to commend the staff. That was a lot of work. All of the work, all of the documentation that you guys have for the capital budget and the 5-year plan and explaining why and your process for how you're going to determine what projects move forward. I don't know who came up with your strategies and all that, but you all did an amazing job.
Thank you so much, and yes, I must give credit to the team. Primarily the facilities planning department, Pam Lewis and Richard and Jerry, but also a maintenance staff who went out and actually did the condition assessment.
Well, great job.
Thank you.
Ms. Cunningham?
Yes, and I too want to commend you. I thought that was a wonderful way to present it, and also by breaking the whole district up into the numbered sections.
And areas.
Yes, so you kind of got to see based on numbers what areas, and it wasn't necessarily by school board member area, it was just by individual areas and communities. I just thought that was really great. I appreciated that, and I really liked the first section, I guess it was probably 6 pages, 4 to 6 pages, outlining the major priorities, what years you thought, and the revenue source, which brings up the half-cent sales tax and the need for that as well. So I thought at least that first area was really, really good. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
How is this material going to be utilized?
Mrs. Fields?
Go ahead, you can tell.
If the board adopts it, it's on the agenda tonight, we will use this as our guideline. And we have 3 projects right at the beginning. We have the new high school, we have Mulberry, and we're trying to work on Old Davenport. And we have the major revenue sources, which was the LCI, the impact fee, and the sales tax. So we will use this as the guideline, which schools we do and when we do it, and work with finance department on the funding. My plan is, because projections change and needs change, I want to bring this every year for an update, because we might have to tweak it and reprioritize projects. But we'll use it as our guidance in building school and modernizing schools and additions where needed for capacity, or if they're too old to remodel or renovate.
There's only one suggestion that I would have, but just for clarity, and it might be here, and maybe I overlooked it, is be a little bit more specific on how the Old Davenport School is going to be utilized. It might be here, I didn't see it.
Okay.
Just maybe
certainly we can do that.
In parentheses or something, just so that the public can know what the vision and the plan is for that campus.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll add some more to that.
But great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Great job. Okay. Are there any other questions regarding any of the informational items? I know Mr. Wilson stepped out. I don't believe, Ms. Wrong, there's no need for the executive session? Okay.
There's not. Oh, okay.
No, it's not, because we'll be bringing it at the work session once we get with Marianne. So there's no need for that one.
So that's going to be attached to the board meeting agenda tonight, Ms. Jackie?
Which one?
AFSCME?
AFSCME. It should be attached, yes. The board meeting for tonight. It is, okay. And the other, the statewide assessment calendar that's out there, we briefly went over that. It shows the district versus the state. So we wanted to make sure that we had that out there, and that will be up on our website as well. So that is all of our information items. I believe since the chair is out, turn over to the vice chair.
Okay. All right.
You're up.
Okay, so it's 4 o'clock, and the question is, do we want to go quickly over the board meeting agenda?
Okay.
I have one question if we don't, if we want to skip us at 1.
Okay. Sure. Let's do it that way. I know I have one too. Go ahead. Which item is?
Just the focus addendum training. On any kind of deal this size, I would expect I assume that's just a change order related to additional testing. Anything that's significant, I would expect to get something like that. Or is that kind of the extent of it, or do you think we'll get more?
I don't think so, but Tina's probably listening. Could you ask Tina to step in? Michael? and then she'll come back and respond. But I don't believe it's going to be anything else.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure she'll step right in.
Yeah, what number is
I'm
that?
sorry. Okay.
It's
I
on the
know.
regular agenda.
R44?
R44.
Where is it? On the focus, okay.
Yes.
Is it
It's
for
where
the
they ask-
39?
Yes,
From what I
39,000
remember
for
last.
additional training.
That's right. So you're saying what now?
I'm just asking if
There be any?
yeah, on
additional-
a big implementation like this, you're likely to get change orders and things. I'm just curious, are there going to be a number more, or
Is
just
this
kind
it?
of?
There she
I
is.
see.
Yeah.
Good question.
Sorry, I was on the phone. Question.
On the addition to the
The
39.
39, so that is for additional project management and training hours to get us through Survey 2, because we're still, Survey 5 is out of Genesis, so we're still having to do last year's complete survey out of the old system, which goes up through October, November, and we're learning all of the new surveys out of Focus. So that is just some additional buffer hours to make sure that we get through those critical pieces. And when we put the project in 15 or so months ago, it was an estimate to say, this is how many hours.
No, I completely expect to get something like that. What I'm trying to get a sense is, do we think this will cover it, or
Yes.
do you anticipate some additional potential?
I anticipate this will get us through this school year, that we shouldn't have any additional funding.
When would you consider Focus complete? We could say it's in.
The difficulty is there are only certain things. Survey 2, for example, is in October. That's probably our biggest, most complex. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's our funding most complex. Survey 5, which is at the end of the year, is that comprehensive, and that really deals with all the accountability and all the cleanup of dropouts. So that's one large, that's like at the end of the year. So it's hard to say without really going through a full year. I would say we are fully operational right now, and the biggest thing we're working on are training folks how to use the system. And we're trying to do it, as Dr. Eggs pointed out, in increments where they're not overwhelmed. So we're piecing it piece by piece we're working on transcripts right now. We got interim reports next week, so those are the two big things. We got very close survey, so we're starting to look at cleaning up the data for the October survey. So those in the next 4 weeks are what we're working on. We have training this week and training next week. We've got lots of open labs where it's unscheduled, where they can just bring the work. That's been extremely successful in all of the things that we've done. So.
And you feel good about all the data migration and all that?
We feel good about the data migration. I think the biggest thing is the learning curve of learning a whole new system.
Gotcha.
But I mean, we expect to get some angst, but by and large, we've not heard a lot of it, so that's always a good thing.
I haven't heard much either, so I know.
So that's a good thing, in my mind. If you're not hearing a lot of angst, that's a good thing. So, I mean, we're certainly working hard and trying to provide multiple avenues for training, because we know travel and leaving school is also difficult.
Good job. I know that's been an ordeal for all of you.
And it's been a huge team effort. It's certainly been a transition, but we've worked very hard to try to make it as smooth as possible.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So let me ask this then. So does anybody have any questions from items C1 through C, let's do it that way, through C39? No, C43 on the consent agenda. First part. Anybody have any questions? Okay, and then would anybody have any questions on the regular agenda moving forward from item C, or item 43 at C13 through item 50, R54?
I don't have any questions, but there's nothing attached yet, and maybe it's going to be last minute for E55, the AFSCME salary negotiations. Maybe that's something that's going to come last minute.
There's an emergency item, so it should have been attached.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not.
I don't show it on
No.
there.
Yeah, it's not there. I thought it was that in
I provided that information earlier, so we'll check on it.
there. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Joanne will make sure we get it attached.
And if nothing else, I'd like to request, at least for me, a hard copy, since
Right.
time is of the essence here.
Yeah.
They provided the hard copies just before the work session?
So we do have those, okay. And then we can attach it.
Yeah, that would be great.
Give it to the vice chair. She just came
Mr. Wilson, you blinked and Mrs. Cunningham
Just
reviewed the agenda.
in. It's almost done.
I do have a question about
Oh,
the
sire.
She reviewed the agenda.
We may have already answered it.
But of course, you all knew when you elected her, she was more than capable.
Oh, about that.
On the,
Oh, she's on this one. She's finishing off the regular.
oh, we're not there yet? Okay.
She's doing the regular agenda.
Well, I will defer to Vice Chair
I
Cunningham.
think he's gonna need to finish up there.
Go finish up with the agenda? Okay, so
Yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Fields, then we're gonna, we just got it? It's here, okay. So you're just gonna make certain that it gets attached on there as far, so that the public has an opportunity to review that as well. Okay, any other questions then, on any of the items
More of the same.
through the end of item R54? Mr. Wilson, do you have a question on any item up through 54, R54? Through any of the items on the board meeting agenda for tonight?
Give me just one moment, please.
Sure,
R54,
that's the last one.
that's the last item.
Yes.
Okay, I did notice that there was one item from the consent agenda that was moved to the regular agenda. Was that something that was asked for by a board member?
Like the same.
Okay.
It's a charter school that we're spending money on in a facility way. And we hear too many times that charter schools don't think we support them when they're a conversion school. So I
Okay.
want to always make sure that anytime we spend facilities dollars in a conversion charter school, it's not buried in a consent agenda. It is given prominent position, no matter how small the dollars are, so that the public and that school know that this board supports spending money to maintain our facilities that they run as a quasi-private school. And that's been done several times before.
Yes. And
C13.
C13. that I
C13,
pulled, it was part of the consent agenda.
it's
down
item
in
43
Right.
on the,
Okay.
item 43 on the agenda. And then Mrs. Cunningham had one other question.
Yes,
But I
sir.
think this is a question for Mr. Bridges. I just need to open the meeting for public discussion prior to the policy vote and prior to the millage vote.
Yes, sir, and you'll want to do those as separate public hearings,
Okay.
one for policies, one for the villages.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions on the agenda? Mr. Chair, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So I think it's time for board member comments. Board member comments?
I don't know if this actually happened or not, but I don't know if you guys saw the video of Pam Stewart last. Did anybody get that teed up? If you didn't,
It's
I'll
in
get
here.
it. Okay.
She has it in here. Miss,
Yeah, there's an issue here. It relates to the test that some teachers are having some difficulty passing, but it also kind of relates to just stop it just a second. Like, you know, the overview of this is the reporter has been trying to find out about what DOE's take is on the test that a lot of our teachers across the state are having some difficulty passing, particularly since they adjusted the test a few years back. She's been trying to get an answer from Pam for like a year and a half. I just want you to watch this.
Cheryl, what can we do here?
She has things she has to do.
Okay.
We have a short break here, then we have our bus lunch.
Okay.
And after that, she's got places she needs to be.
Okay.
So I can provide you with a comment.
Cheryl, this is not going to work. I mean, truly, at
That's
this
what I
point.
can offer you. Don't you go.
Cheryl, this is not appropriate. It's not professional.
It's not appropriate
We've
for
been
you to
doing this
approach
story
it.
for a year and a half. We've been asking for an interview for a year and a half to speak with the commissioner or somebody who's appropriate to speak to about this, and we've gotten nothing but a written comment. That's what we can do.
More than 1,000 teachers just lost their jobs this summer for nothing more than not passing a portion of this test. Is this acceptable?
The law says that they have to pass the test.
So at what point does the State Department of Education look at this and is there concern about this?
That's not a question I can answer, that's not what I do.
Okay, but the commissioner can ask that.
She could.
She can answer that question.
Right, but she's asked me to provide you with a comment.
That's not no. Cheryl, I'm not here to, get into a fight about this, but, I mean, she's the commissioner of the State Department of Education.
I know that.
This is something that's impacting thousands upon thousands of teachers, and we've been doing stories about this. But you can't answer all the questions. What is the State Department, is the State Department of Education concerned about this?
I can't answer the question, I can't speak for the This is totally inappropriate. I've asked you not to do this.
I just asked you a question that you specifically said that you can't answer.
I've asked you
so
not
let's
to
talk
do
to
this.
A board member. Let's talk to a board member.
They're not going to have the knowledge that you're looking at.
So who has the knowledge? I'm asking you questions and you can't answer them.
You as much as we can by email.
Commissioner Stewart, can you give us some type of response to these failure rates that continue to happen?
So let me ask you something.
Sure.
You're interrupting me in my 15-minute break for lunch. Is that correct?
Ma'am, we have spent the last year and a half asking for an interview about this, and we've only received a written statement. And I respect Ms. Etter's response to, I'll give you a comment, but when I asked her one question, she couldn't answer it.
Okay,
so
that's great. But
teachers
so let me
want to know,
ask you,
is the State Department of Education concerned about this?
Are you interrupting my 15 minutes that I have to be able to have lunch?
I have been asking for a year and a half.
I'll answer your question when you answer mine.
I am interrupting your 15 minutes to have lunch so we can get answers for the thousands of teachers who continue to struggle, frustrated, failing this
So
test.
we can go on record as you are rude enough to be able to interrupt me. Is that right?
If that's what you want to say, absolutely.
Okay.
So my question to you, Ms. Stewart, is the State Department of Education concerned about these high failure rates that continue?
We are so concerned about the quality of our teachers in the classroom every single day, and we want to ensure, if you were here, you could have heard about the turnaround schools and how important it is that we have the highest quality teachers in front of our students, because our students really need our best quality. So we're doing what we can to ensure that we follow state law and that these teachers are passing the assessments that are required in order for them to be certified to be in the classroom.
We just found this summer that more than 1,000 Florida teachers with proven records in the classroom who were deemed effective teachers lost their jobs just because they couldn't pass a portion of this test. Is that acceptable to you?
It is acceptable to me to have high-quality teachers in the classroom. Our students deserve that, and it's our responsibility to ensure that we're following the law and we get those teachers in the classroom so that every single one of our students, whether they're my children, your children, or anyone's children, have the very best teachers they possibly can.
So at what point does the Department of Education...
I've answered your question. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You can cut it. I don't think that'll surprise too many folks in this room, but I'm going to run that again tonight. I want the audience to see it. But for here, I was going to ask if we could get, like, sometime in the next couple weeks, like a one-pager of what the specific tests are, like that everybody has to take, because I'm still a little confused, and I think she's talking specifically about CTE tests, but there's the professional standard test, and there's the general knowledge test, and so it's like, so if you can just kind of lay that out, I would really appreciate that. And I don't know if the board wants to say anything about this now. I'm going to talk about it, like the kind of incentive that creates at the state level on the local level when there's that kind of behavior and that kind of contempt for the public. So I just wanted to run that by.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Any other board comments?
Oh, I happen to bring, my granddaughter took that test 5 times, finally passed it. So she's interning now. the colleges or universities aren't graduating you until you pass it. And that is putting a chilling effect on people entering the field of education when you can't even get your degree. And she had 5 exams because she was elementary and ESE, so she had quite a few. In fact, she's a semester behind because of the testing that she was trying to pass, so I understand.
How much did that cost her in the
A lot,
aggregate?
a lot. No, it cost me a lot. Yes, because there's parts, but they charge the full amount even if you're only missing one part. So it's very expensive.
I'm thinking about starting a business too, like a Becker CPA review to get teachers.
I thought that.
Gosh, it's crazy.
I thought you meant as a caterer.
Any other board comments? Yes, ma'am.
I just have one. The Winter Haven Pep Group is having a principals reception for the Winter Haven area principals tomorrow night at 5 at the Winter Haven Chamber. If any of you are free and interested in coming, please let me know. We would love to have any other board members that would like to attend.
Do we have to notice something?
If it's
I think it'd be a very good idea for
To
our
notice, okay.
community relations folks to do.
okay.
Put out a media advisory.
Tomorrow evening, 5. At 5.
You all know.
Where?
Rachel, if you just notice it,
At the Winter Haven Chamber.
you'll see something.
Thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. Harris? Did you have a comment? No? Okay. I have just three quick items. I have been meeting, I want everyone to know, the board to know that I have been meeting with Mr. Bridges and Mrs. Matthews on their contract, so we're still working through that. I'm not sure how we ended with board docs last week.
That we bring board docs, and I believe they said it was e-agenda plus to bring them to present.
Okay.
Because they were having issues.
And then finally, on the half-cent sales tax, we had, last time we met, we talked about using some of the BP oil funds up to $100,000 to educate, not to advocate, but to educate the public about the half-cent sales tax. In meeting with the consultant, they have suggested, I think it's a great idea, that as opposed to using professionals, that we use the superintendent to talk about what we've done and how we would use those funds. I think did that come
the
out?
way that came out.
Came out.
Professional
Rephrase that.
Yeah.
That's no lady, she's my wife. Yeah.
As opposed to using professional actresses and actors, that we use a professional superintendent.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
I apologize for that. Is my favorite.
Oh, goodness.
They had suggested that we use that the superintendent make those commercials as opposed to us paying a professional to make those commercials for us, because first of all, she's our superintendent and I think has a much better rapport with our community than anyone else could have. But and knows our district obviously better than anyone else would. They're suggesting that we do that in one of our local facilities, Mr. Hill, perhaps at Auburndale High School, where you have a professional.
I will have to call the principal.
We've been working on him.
You have.
Like I told my son, I'm not the pool over there anymore. But I'll be glad to call him.
Okay, thank you. And the point is not to incur any cost in making the film, and then use the entire amount to actually run the ads. He was not able to give me a printed budget yet, but I will make that available to board members. Effectively, what they're talking about doing is running 447 spots on Fox News, CNN, HGTV, MSNBC, and Bay News 9 over the course of starting the middle of this month and running through the night of the elections, or the night before the elections.
Is Jackie okay to do that? I mean, if she's in a, should we not ask? I don't want to get you in trouble. I mean, if it's like.
Actually, we did talk about it.
Yeah.
And
Should be.
Okay.
We did talk about it. I asked her if she
All
was good at that, and she said she was.
All right.
So, gosh, I need to think these things through.
We assumed that you spoke to her in advance. You wouldn't have said it otherwise.
Yeah.
I did speak to her.
She was smiling, so I assumed.
And she agrees that She agrees that, she agreed to do the spots. So, well, you know, we did some polling and not so long ago, and as it turns out, Superintendent Byrd polled very high with our community. So I think this is a wise move for us. We can honestly say to the public that there were no production costs whatsoever, that all the costs went into the ads, and the consultants' costs are covered by the PAC, so there won't be any cost there. So, having butchered that badly, I think we got through it. Are there any questions? Okay. Anything else? Any other comments from the board? So I think we have executive session now.
No, it's been canceled.